Hello friends, welcome to UPSC Logics, and in this video we shall have a look at the Chandra Gupta Maurya Empire, and we shall have a look at the Mauryan kingdom according to Megasthenes. So without wasting any time, let's begin. Let us have a look at Chandragupta Maurya's history first, and he ruled from 321 to 297 BC. He gained the throne at the age of 25 after he dethroned the last Nanda ruler Dhanananda in 321 BC with the help of Kautilya, and at first he moved towards northwest and conquered all the kingdoms up to river Indus, and later on moved towards central India and conquered the region north of Narmada by 312 BC. After that, he started moving to against Seleucus Nicator in the northwest, who was the Greek general, and he was left behind by Alexander and had gained control after Alexander's death. So he concluded a treaty with Seleucus Nicator in 303 BC, which was in favor of the Mauryas, and he gifted around 500 elephants to Seleucus Nicator to gain control of the Trans-Indus region. He is also said to be married to his daughter, or Seleucus Nicator's daughter, Helena, and was known as Sandrocotus to the Greeks. So this question is very important and has been often asked. Seleucus sent his ambassador Megasthenes, and this video is concerned about Megasthenes only. So this Megasthenes came to Chandragupta Maurya's court in Patliputra, and he wrote a book called Indica. Chandragupta Maurya embraced Jainism in his later years, and he stepped down from the throne in favor of Bindusar, and later he was accompanied by Bhadrabhu and committed Salekna at Shravanbelgola near Mysore in Karnataka. Let us have a look at Megasthenes, and Megasthenes came to Chandragupta Maurya's court in 303 BC after the treaty was concluded with Seleucus Nicator. So Seleucus Nicator, as we know, was the Greek general left behind by Alexander after he left India, and Megasthenes was his ambassador, and he traveled from Kabul and Punjab to reach Patliputra. He was unfamiliar with the language and customs of the country, and his work is considered to be a reliable source of information. So his book was called Indica, and although this book has been lost, but the writings are still found in Strabo, Aryan, Diodorus, and others, and they give us a good insight into Chandragupta's civil and military government, the country's soil and climate, animals, and how the people behaved. He also mentions about a royal road which led from northwest of Patliputra and measured 1,840 kilometers, where every mile was marked. He mentions Patliputra as Palimbotra and was situated on the confluence of Ganga and Son rivers. And he tells us about the lifestyle of the king as well. He tells us that the imperial palace was constructed of wood or timber and had extensive park, fish, ponds, trees. It is through his work that we come to know that the king used to stay in the palace and was under the protection of female bodyguards and appeared in public only at time of war or as judge in the courts. Otherwise, he would go for hunting. Megasthenes gives us information about the central administration, and he tells us that the king was the most important person in the administration of the country. He was represented as a conscious and industrious person, and he ruled the kingdom with the help of council of ministers. These council of ministers were known as councillors or assessors, and they advised the king on the management of public affairs. Then the king also hired a large body of spies who used to give him information with regards to everything that was going on in the kingdom, and these have been called as overseers by Megasthenes. And these spies basically employed a lot of courtesans as their collaborators. Megasthenes also throws light on the military administration and says that Chandragupta had an army of 600,000 men at his disposal, and there was a war office that consisted of 30 members that was divided into 6 boards of 5 members each, and these boards were in charge of different departments, which were navy, infantry, cavalry, war chariots, elephants, and transport. And according to Megasthenes, the soldiers formed the most numerous part of the society. They had the largest part of the society were soldiers. They got a regular pay from the state and were supplied with arms and equipments. The chariots were drawn by 4 horses, and on each of them there were 2 warriors, in addition to a driver, and broadswords were the principal weapon in addition to javelin, bows, and arrows. About the municipal and local administration, Megasthenes has got certain things to say. So the first thing which he tells us is about the town officials, and they were known as Ashtinomoi. The municipal corporation again was consists of 30 members and was divided into 6 boards of 5 members each. So each of the boards had a different function, and the first board looked after everything relating to industrial art, regulating wages. Artisans were considered sacrosanct, and interference with their work was dealt with capital punishment. So this we can say that was the most important caste at that point of time. The second board was required to look after the comfort of foreigners, since we know that Chandra Gupta Maurya was dealing with foreigners a lot, so he had created a second board, and in case of sickness or death of the foreigner, he was given a proper cremation and his property was protected. Then the third board was responsible for the registration of birth and deaths, designed both to facilitate taxation and government records. This was a very important thing that he started. Then there was a fourth board, and it looked after the trade and commerce. It regulated sales and enforced use of stamped weights and measures. And the merchants had to pay a license tax as well. The fifth board controlled manufacturing of articles, so it was kind of a ISI control, and old goods were separated from the new, and fines were imposed for breaking laws. The sixth board, it collected the tithe on the or the taxes on the price of the goods sold, and evasion of this tax was punishable with death. So all the six board had their rules defined, and as we can see, it was very similar to what the form of government we have today. Then about the society and the people, Megasthenes has got certain things to say, and Megasthenes describes 7 classes of people living in the times of Chandra Gupta Maurya. So he does not mention slaves as this particular class, and this is a very important question. Most of the times it is asked what are the 7 classes of people that have been mentioned by Megasthenes, or whether slaves have been mentioned in the 7 classes that Megasthenes has described. So slaves are not part of the society. So the first one is the Brahmins, and they comprised of the first class or the highest ranks amongst all the others, and they were small in number. Then were agriculturists and cultivators, and they formed the majority of people and were considered second class, and they had to pay a quarter of their produce as rent to the landlord. So it was 25% of the produce in the times of Chandragupta Maurya. Then the third class was shepherds and hunters, and they led a nomadic life in the forest and killing beasts and wildlife and making land habitable for the people, and they received an allowance from the king in form of corn for their services. Then came the artisans, and as we know that artisans had a separate board from them, and it was a privileged class, and they were exempted from paying any form of tax and even received maintenance grant from the royal exchequer. Then came the warriors, and these were also a huge number of warriors, although they were less than the cultivators, and they were also maintained at the expense of the state. Then came the official and the spies, and this was the sixth and the seventh class, and these were employed as supervisors for gathering information for the king, since the king never left his palace most of the times except war and being as a judge in the courts. So according to Megasthenes, it was a good governance all around, and slavery did not exist, as I told you before. And there is also mention of the fourth class or Shudras, but it is not mentioned anywhere in the other scriptures. So friends, this was what Megasthenes had to tell us about the rule of Chandragupta Maurya according to his book Indica. And thank you so much for watching, and have a nice day, and Jai Hind.